This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Thursday, August 17th. Thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Coming up today, more dead whales and dolphins washing up in New Jersey. This show actually will have quite a bit of focus on the Garden State today. Not because we want to cater exclusively to Garden Staters, though we know we have a lot of them that listen. New Jersey happens to be the focal point of not only this wind farm nonsense that many people believe, or at least are willing to entertain, is killing whales and dolphins, some 40 of them since December. So we're going to talk with a state senator out of South Jersey, a guy called Mike Testa, who is a bright guy, I think a real up-and-coming shining star in the Republican Party in New Jersey. Not just about this, but also an important ruling that every parent should pay close attention to, particularly if you have kids in public school, because what New Jersey's governor and attorney general are doing right now in court to 3 different school districts as it relates to your rights as a parent. You need to hear about this story if you haven't. And we'll get Senator Testa's perspective on that. He also happens to be an attorney. It's a great conversation. Our friend Julie Kelly is back. Stephen Sund, the former Capitol Police chief, who has given a big interview to Tucker and talked a lot about the feds involved in January 6th. We play a little of his testimony for her. She gives her assessment of that, also the indictment of Trump in Georgia. She has a perspective on that. Julie, I think, is now kind of uniquely keyed in at Substack, doing her own project on the way forward through the court system for Trump and kind of, as we know, the political persecution. She has a better perspective on this. She spends most of her time now studying it, and she's going to be invaluable as we comb through these court cases. That's on the way. Also, another huge ruling against Starbucks, which is a great way to start the day. We'll get into that coming up, too. Let me tell you about the guy that makes the show possible, though. I had a tweet yesterday that I put out, and I put it up on social media today. Obama tweeted something to the effect of the Inflation Reduction Act, among other things he claims it did. 1 year later, it's lowered healthcare costs, to which I reminded him, I thought Obamacare was supposed to lower healthcare costs. You know, and I know healthcare costs are not less. It doesn't cost less to practice medicine these days. The only thing that's going to bring the cost of medicine down is open, fair competition. And while John Ruhlman can't do anything about that, he does know about 80 different private insurers that he does business with regularly. usmedicalplan.com is who I want you to reach out to today. If you buy your own health insurance, you know the premiums are sky high. And so if you're a small business owner and you pay for your employees' health insurance, if you buy health insurance for yourself as a senior citizen on a fixed income, you buy a supplemental plan for Medicare. Maybe you're a family of, 3 to 8, and you buy your own private health insurance plan for your family. That's a lot of money, and he can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month and get you at least equal, if not better coverage. Like I said, he knows so many private health insurance companies out there. And yes, maybe in some cases he'll walk you onto Obamacare if that's absolutely the best fit for you and saves you the most money. But most likely he'll find you 30 to 60% savings and a better private healthcare insurance plan. Guy tweeted at me just yesterday and said his township, he's a police officer in a township, and they're struggling right now over the cost of health insurance. I said, listen, please reach out to John. He can help whole organizations that are buying their own out-of-pocket health insurance for their employees. 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. Wow, would you look at this? This is just the most amazing thing. This person, deservedly so, continues to get wealthier by the jury. Starbucks. I adore this story, folks. There's a personal satisfaction I take in this story, unlike maybe few others. I have been covering the tale of a Starbucks on Rittenhouse that And for those who maybe listen outside the Philadelphia area proper and you don't know, Rittenhouse is, it's always traditionally been considered one of the swankier parts of Philadelphia. Now, I guess it still is, but mind the stabbing. Park, I mean, there's some great places to eat. It's a beautiful place, at least it used to be. I don't know the last time I actually took an evening stroll there. I will forever associate Rittenhouse Square with the Barnes & Noble there because I was having an event maybe a block from there, and I'd been parked there. This was back when Anna still... Did you... I don't know if you're going to get into this or not with Little Eddie. Do you have Elf on the Shelf?
I do not, no.
Are you going to get into that?
I probably not. You'd
do well to just not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
The problem with Elf on a Shelf is once you start, you're committed to the thing until he's done with it. And that could be years of commitment. And I'll just give you a cautionary tale. The Rittenhouse Square area will always trigger in my memory the night I went to an event, and I come out of the event, and I look at my phone, and Christine has texted me in a panic because Dean got to the elf. Oh, no. And there is an elf corpse ripped to shreds laying on the ground, and she snaps the photo of the elf corpse ripped to shreds, stuffing, head removed, head chewed. And the elf is still a very important part of the Stigall house at this point in the Christmas season. So I remember hoofing it to the Barnes & Noble on Rittenhouse to try to find a replacement elf, which, of course, we've had the elf for several years, so the newer elves don't look like the old elf. So we had to do, I can't even remember how we ended up explaining away that our old elf got cosmetic surgery or something, and but neither, so I get a little twitchy every time I talk about Rittenhouse. That's my memory of that place now, is in a panic trying to find an elf at the 11th hour. But I digress. There's also a Starbucks there, or at least the last time I went there was. Is it still there or not? And for a time, they used to have a policy at Starbucks all across the country, as I understand it. You can't come in and just hang out and not buy anything. We're not public restroom. We're not a public library. We're a business. So if you want to come in, and specifically if you want to use our restroom, you got to buy something. Actually, I take that back. I think the policy might have been, if you want to come in, you can hang out, but you can't use our restroom. I think might be more to the point. Because there were a couple of black guys, and I say black because it's relevant to the story here. Not because I typically even bring up people's race, but because this is important to the story. Two black men are in the Starbucks sitting down. They have not purchased anything, and they're doing business. Yeah, I think this is it. You could go in and maybe sit with somebody who's having a coffee or not at all, and you could mingle, but they didn't care about that. It was the next part. One of the guys gets up and says, I want to use the restroom. Could I have the key to the restroom, please? Now, this is back in 2018, but by this time, Starbucks was already having an issue, particularly in higher traffic areas like Center City, Philadelphia, of homeless people going in and using these bathrooms. And so Starbucks had to lock these. This has been a long time in practice. I mean, how long have businesses in high traffic areas been telling you got to buy something or ask for the key from behind the desk to use the restroom? It's been around a long time, decades maybe.
I was in high school, year 2000, waiting for the bus at Ridge and Leverington and the Dunkin' Donuts right there.
Yeah.
You couldn't go in without a key.
So this has been a long-standing policy because you can't have vagrants coming in and washing up and you're treating your restroom like it's a public restroom when you're trying to run a business. So not unusual that Starbucks would say, well, we can't give you the key if you haven't purchased anything. And this guy starts freaking out. It's because I'm black. Naturally. And he's carrying on. He wants to use the restroom. The Starbucks people are kind of holding firm here. No, you're not going to use the restroom without buying something. Cops end up getting called. And the cops show up, the Philadelphia cops show up, and they tell these two guys, you got to go. This becomes a national episode. If you remember, I don't know if you do, but this became a national dialogue about how Starbucks was going to conduct their business going forward. And at the time, Howard Schultz, if you remember, and the mayor of Philadelphia, and all the Al Sharpton types, I think Eric Holder even weighed in on it because the police were involved. I mean, it was the most insane thing. And Starbucks did this whole bow at the altar of woke, and to prove they weren't racist in any way, they fired basically everybody white affiliated with the story. That was the first thing. Whitey got to go. Even though this was their stupid policy. Whitey's got to get out of there. So any white employee in the transaction of giving these black guys a hard time about using the restroom, enforcing their own policy, they got to go. The cops, they had to pay. The police chief at the time was told, the commissioner, that was before Ross. I don't think it was Ramsey. I'm trying to remember who it was. But the commissioner had to pay his penance and say he was sorry and we were going to do better. The cops had to, I'm not even sure there weren't a couple of cops under investigation. I mean, it was a deal. And then Schultz came out and he said, all Starbucks across the country are implementing a new policy. Anybody that wants to come in anytime they want and hang out as long as they want and use the restroom if they want, they can. We're going to turn this place into a public toilet that happens to sell caffeinated products. That was the big Howard Schultz knee-jerk overreaction, and the thousands of Starbucks across the country all had to turn their stores into public toilets. Well, we know how that went. We have seen subsequent closures of Starbucks all over the country, haven't we? Because people have stopped going into them. You had vagrants doing what vagrants do, and crack addicts doing what crack addicts do, stumbling into these places, people finding needles and all kinds of awful stuff in the bathroom, unspeakable stuff, but they also had people just coming in and camping. Homeless people decided to treat their local Starbucks as their encampment. It's funny, people don't like working environments like that, Fast Eddie. People are not, it doesn't matter how much pay you give people. If they haven't signed up to work in a homeless shelter to earn a living, they're not inclined to get up every morning, put on an apron, and pour coffee as they're stepping over homeless and cleaning up needles and drug paraphernalia in the restroom of the business. You tend to have a retention problem with employees. And customers stop coming. So stores start closing. And you're seeing this again. You've seen it over the years throughout the country. People are just abandoning Starbucks. Starbucks then, of course, it got so bad. Old Schultz and team had to reverse their policy a few years later. Upon further review, maybe it wasn't so smart to just open up our restrooms to the... So they went back to locking up their restrooms except for paying customers. Now, the problem with this story, it's not just the schadenfreude of Starbucks and their business model taking it on the chin. Also involved were the employees and the managers involved in this. They had to enforce the policy, keep in mind. That's all they were doing. And you remember this manager who was involved in this story, I believe she lived in New Jersey and commuted in, or there were 2 or 3 people involved in this. The clerks themselves, but then the manager who gave the direction was the one that was sort of made the example of, if I remember correctly.
She was the regional manager.
Yeah.
And she resides in New Jersey. So it was her, this store fell under her purview. So she wasn't the one that called or the manager in the store, but this was her area.
But she was fired basically for being white, was her interpretation. They removed her. She, for some reason, she wasn't involved in the actual initial altercation, but I don't know if she was consulted. I don't know how Starbucks got to the place where they justified firing her, but they did. And so she took Starbucks to court in Camden, no less. And a jury in Camden rewarded her an unbelievable sum of money back in June, if you remember, $25.6 million in damages. Now, you've heard that story already. You're like, Stigall, you've heard us. I've heard this. You told us this already. No, but there's more. But wait, there's more. Starbucks must now pay a former Philadelphia area manager, awarded $25.6 million in Camden, an additional $2.7 million from a federal judge ruling yesterday. Whoa! Ladies and gentlemen, we're now getting up to the $30 million payday for this white woman, this regional manager formerly of Starbucks. Is that not delightful? Shannon Phillips is her name. Phillips was fired soon after the arrests of two black men at a Philadelphia store caught on video that went viral. The arrests prompting national uproar. I've already told you all about that. Phillips sued Starbucks in the next year, arguing that as a regional operations director, she didn't have anything to do with the arrests of the men at the store. At Rittenhouse was fired less than a month later for refusing to place a white district manager at another store on leave over claims of racism in pay that Phillips said she knew to be untrue. So this woman got her lawyer, and her attorney later said Phillips was a scapegoat to show action was being taken following the furor over the episode. Starbucks lawyers, meanwhile, argued that Phillips was not let go because of her race, but because she failed to lead her team in the aftermath of the arrests. Ooh, that's weak sauce. Failed to lead her team in the aftermath? You mean the policies that her employees were implementing at your company's direction that caused a national firestorm and you terrible embarrassment, Howard Schultz and Starbucks corporate, and so you made asses of yourself and you destroyed your business model and you needed somebody to blame, and so it sounds to me like you blame Miss Phillips. And Miss Phillips' attorney appropriately made the case to a jury of her peers as well as a federal judge, and they said, oh, I think you're going to pay for this, Starbucks. I tell you, every now and again, ladies and gentlemen, even when you may despair and feel all that's lost and there's not much justice left in the world, every now and again you come across a story like this and it perks you right up, doesn't it? This is just a great way to start the morning. The attorney, Matucci, I think, or Matucci, the lawyer, said Phillips was a scapegoat, argued Phillips was not let go because of race. She was let go because of race and not because she failed to lead. The attorney declined to comment on the order Wednesday. A Starbucks spokesperson didn't return comment. During a July hearing, Phillips, Starbucks employee for 13 years, oversaw retail operations in South Jersey, Philadelphia, Delaware, and parts of Maryland. She told the judge she once planned to work at the coffee company until she was 70. But when she was fired in May of 2018, Phillips, who was 46 years of age at that point in her life, by the way, so a well-established career professional, not some kid, not some punk, this is what amazes me. Some woman half this woman's age was hired to be the chief marketer at Bud Light, and look what she did to the company. All this woman's guilty of is upholding and running the stores and upholding the policies and managing the stores per the direction of her corporate overlords. She's guilty of doing nothing more than running the stores and implementing their policies. And when they get caught in a national excrement storm, they decide this woman has given over a decade of her life to this company, said she'd like to stay there the rest of her life. She's a middle-aged woman, and they throw her over. She immediately began looking for new work, taking resume improvement and interviewing classes, attending job fairs, talking with recruiters. I knew I needed a job, she testified. But her options for finding a job commensurate with her annual salary of almost $300,000. Boy, how about that? Regional manager for Starbucks, $300,000. That's not bad, Cheddar. She had a hard time finding jobs that would be commensurate with that kind of pay. She took a regional position with Raymore Flanagan, but said salary and benefits were not as robust. Then, by 2022, while battling breast cancer, folks, she's now 52 years of age. She took unpaid time off for surgery, worked at Raymore and Flanagan while receiving chemotherapy and radiation. If she were at Starbucks, she told the judge, she believed she would have been allowed paid leave. Her lawyer said she was owed more than $3 million. Money and economists said equaled Phillips' past and future lost earnings and benefits, as well as money she lost moving from one tax bracket to another. Phillips' lawyers have also requested Starbucks pay $1.4 million in legal fees from 2018 to 2023. Following a 6-day trial, jurors determined Starbucks had violated Phillips' federal civil rights and New Jersey laws prohibiting racial discrimination. That's when we got that jury verdict back in June. So there's justice, ladies and gentlemen. There is justice. Good for Miss Phillips. Shannon Phillips awarded $25.6 million from a jury of her peers, and a federal judge basically just covered all of her legal fees as well. And while I assume, I don't know, I guess she's on the other side of her breast cancer battle, we hope. But, and when you're dealing with something like that, there's no amount of money that makes up for having to go through that, I know. But maybe that's some solace, and there's some justice. And most of all, that ridiculous policy that Howard Schultz, rather than just stick with Miss Phillips and hold the line, let this be a warning shot to corporate America. This was one of the first great corporate America blunders to try to curry favor with the mob rule left, and they fell flat on their face and paid a dear financial cost for it, and oh, how I delight in it. The schadenfreude I feel when I watch people like Starbucks and Bud Light and Target, when I watch them make these boneheaded decisions in the interest of placating the gods of woke on the left, and then they collapse in an embarrassing heap, and sometimes even have to pay restitution to the actual loyal employees they hurt or customers they hurt. There's still some justice. There's still some gratification to be found, even in these dark times. Having said all that, Dr. Rachel Admiral Levine, who's neither an admiral nor a Rachel, is back in the news. Joe Biden's transgender health secretary has praised an Alaska gender-affirming care clinic which wants the word mother replaced with the phrase egg producer.
Dehumanizing.
Did you ever think in a million years that person that we actually depended upon when COVID first became a thing? It horrifies me a little, but I can do nothing but just be honest with you that when COVID first became a thing and nobody knew anything about anything, all we could do was turn to health professionals because all we knew was old people were dying on cruise ships. That's all we knew. You have to really hit rewind and forget everything we now know. Back then, we were just told people were indiscriminately dying on cruise ships, and then people were indiscriminately dying in nursing homes. That's all we knew. Nothing had been shut down. Nobody had even identified what COVID was. That's all we knew. Remember that? Cruise ship people were just getting very, very sick and dying on cruise ships. And then old people started dying in nursing homes on the coasts. We're like, what is it? And it got spooky enough to us that we thought, well, typically we'd have nothing to do with the circus freak that has been hired to run Pennsylvania's health. But in this instance, that's the best we've got. So, Rachel, do you have a minute? Could we pick your brain about what's indiscriminately killing all these people? And so we had Dr. Levine on the show, and it was civil, whatever. And I'd actually like to probably go back and listen to that someday. I don't even remember what the conversation was or how it was framed. But at the time, it was just trying to get as much information as we could about how to keep ourselves safe and what did we need to know about this thing. Well, fast forward. Dr. Rachel Levine has now become Admiral Levine, inexplicably somehow, after killing untold hundreds of elderly people and saving his own mother. At age 65, the admiral, who's neither an admiral nor a Rachel, is the highest-ranking openly transgender federal official in the country now. I go from a story that comes from this region that makes me very, very happy to one that distresses me deeply. Do you notice how I did that? This is now the highest-ranking public health official in the country. Has long endorsed gender-affirming care to minors, argued that the treatment is life-saving. Levine visited Identity Alaska, a nonprofit community center that provides resources and health care to, and boy, the Daily Mail writes this one, are you ready? LGBTQIA2S+. When did that evolve? This thing is literally changing by the day. LGBTQIA2, the number 2, S as in Sam plus. What's the 2S plus? I thought it was IA plus. Where did the A go? Oh, no, it's in there. IA is in there. Now there's a 2 and an S. They're just adding. This is going to start to look like when those computer-generated passwords, when the computer creates a new password for you to log in. This movement is going to start looking like one of your computer-generated login passwords.
I will never apologize for standing up for an LGBTQ2 plus kids' rights.
All right, well, Trudeau was ahead of the curve there. It's apparently not migrated down here, much like the Canadian smoke. Oh, hang on here. Okay, asexual and two-spirit. That's what the 2 plus stands for. Asexual and two-spirit. Fast Eddie.
Chris, I think I told you yesterday, China has, what, a 1 million man army? If I'm them and I see what's going on here, do you blame them for thinking, what?
And here's one thing the Chinese don't do. They don't screw around with a lot of letters and symbols and numbers, do they? Their kids, when their kids turn 17, 18 years of old, they're going to put on a uniform, you're going to handle a weapon, you're going to march in precision. That's what China's doing. Anyway, Dr. Rachel Admiral showed up on August 6th and praised the Alaska Clinic's tireless efforts to provide life-saving medical care. Highest-ranking openly transgender official in the country. She said, according to Fox News, these inspiring people work tirelessly to create a more equitable future where all those living in the United States have equal access to life-saving medical care. The health secretary, who grew up male, underwent puberty as a man, attended medical school as a man, got married as a man, became a father as a man, and then decided to transition and become an Admiral Rachel. The Alaska-based company she visited promotes, I hate even using the pronoun. It's a man. He's a man. The Alaska-based company Levine visited promotes ideas that children should learn doctors assign genders to babies by making a guess. You hear this? The highest-ranking health official in the country visits a clinic and heralds its practice of calling doctors assigning gender at birth, calling it a guess now, while also promoting the use of gender-inclusive biology. Teachers and educators need to speak to children without assuming that they are only two sexes and that everyone within a particular sex is the same. Instead of using the word mother in these conversations, they recommend using terms such as egg producer or carrier. In a bid to de-gender the language, its style guide also says words like gestational parent and birth parent should be used. The clinic also recommends children be taught to use proper biological terms for body parts. For example, instead of male reproductive organs, use penis and testicles. Instead of using the word men, their language guide suggests people use the term XY individuals. The Alaska-based company promotes ideas that children should learn that doctors assign gender to babies by making a guess, while also promoting the use of gender-inclusive biology. Section of the website promotes, this company, Identity Alaska, promotes, the website aims to curate resources and connect science educators, students, learners of all types, parents, guardians, and everyone involved in supporting and learning to grow a more inclusive biology curriculum. The company also urges new families not to call these gender reveal parties. You see these all over social media. People cut into the cake and it's blue or pink, or people pop the balloon and the confetti is blue, or the smoke is blue or pink. Gender reveal parties. They don't want you to do that anymore. They now want you to have embryogenesis parties or chromosome reveal parties.
Subhuman. That's so dehumanizing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Egg producer. Not a mother, an egg producer. You know, tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk with a new friend. He's a former congressman in Pennsylvania. His name is Tim Murphy. He's written a piece at the American Spectator called Gender Dysphoria in Kids. It's time for some serious research. He's also a clinical psychologist. And he's written an important piece on this. At present, one more thing on this while we're here. In New Jersey, you know that there are 3 school districts that have set a policy for their districts, for all their teachers. 3 school boards in New Jersey, including the one that the governor of New Jersey lives in. Their policy set by the school board is if there's a child that comes to you, teacher, lunch lady, counselor, librarian, whatever, if a kid comes to you and says, I don't think I'm the gender I am, we're to notify the parents at once. Phil Murphy, the governor of New Jersey, is actively suing these 3 school districts to stop them from implementing these policies. And for some reason, and I don't know what it is, we're going to talk a little more about this today. About 100 parents gathered outside a New Jersey courthouse yesterday as the judge continues to consider whether to block 3 school districts from implementing a new policy requiring teachers to notify parents if their children request to change gender identity. The Middletown, Marlborough, and Englishtown regional school districts, Manalapan Englishtown school districts, approved on June 20th. And less than a day later, the Attorney General and Governor Phil Murphy administration sued to oppose them. I don't know why, but for now 2 solid days, we've expected this judge to rule on this, and another day came and another day went, and this judge is still not ruling on this. I have no idea what is taking so long. I have no idea why this is not clear cut. I don't understand why this judge continues to drag it out. Fox has been camping outside this courthouse waiting for this ruling. They've been for 2 days teasing, judge is going to rule any moment now. It is an extraordinary case. If you think about it, your local school board sets rules for your schools and says, you got kids that are coming to you saying they want to be a different gender. We're telling mom and dad. That's the rule at this school district. Can you imagine the governor of your state or your attorney general suing those districts and saying, oh, no, you won't. You're going to keep that kind of conversation private at school, and you are absolutely not to tell the parents if a kid comes to you and says that. Think of that. Think of the state suing your school board to stop them from a policy that says total transparency must exist between your child and you. That's what we're up against. That's what statists believe about your children, that they are their property, not yours. This is why alternatives to public education must exist and continue to grow. This is why the public education model in this country has to be broken. Because these people, these statists now believe when you turn your child over to a public school, the public school owns them, lock, stock, and barrel. Their behavior, their ideologies, their psychologies, their emotional and mental struggles, they are wards of the state. They are property of the public school district. And you, the parent, are the outsider who's to be kept out, locked out, kept in secret, everything that's going on with them inside those walls. The state of New Jersey is actively prohibiting a public school district from implementing a policy that says any employee that is aware that a student is dealing with something mental, and that's what this is, a mental illness, they are to keep it secret from the parents. This is an extraordinary moment in American history, and we are, yes, eagerly awaiting this judge who continues to drag his feet and not rule on this thing. And I can't imagine what the wait is. Scares me a little bit, actually. There shouldn't be a wait. And the longer this drags on, the more I'm concerned about what this judge is ultimately going to rule, to be perfectly honest with you. So we're braced for that. Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah, but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on, Stu.
Well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Great to be with you. Do you have your Faith and Freedom Summit tickets yet? Good grief, that's going to get here before you know it. It's going to slap you right in the face. I bet you the Friday before, Monday, September 11th, you're going to hear me say, hey, the Faith and Freedom Summit is Monday. And you're going to go, what is this? What was it? Well, maybe not you because you're here listening. But there will be people, mark my words, who will have not checked in for a couple of weeks, and then they're going to hear that Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher and Dr. Robert Jeffress and I and my colleague Tim DeMoss over at Philadelphia's Christian Radio are hosting this thing called the Faith and Freedom Summit, where we're going to talk about religious liberty, and we're going to talk about ultimately what makes us hopeful, what gives us hope in times like this. People of faith. This is going to be different than, our traditional rallies and events. This is not going to be a political partisan pep rally. This is going to be about the state of religious liberty and faith and God and a creator in our national conversation. I think you're going to like it. I think it's going to be different than what we typically do. So I'll warn you right now, this is a thinking person's program. So come bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your church group, bring your Bible study, bring friends, bring kids, whatever. I don't care. I just want to see you. I want to meet you and shake your hand. Monday, September 11th at the Fuge in Bucks County. Warminster is specifically where we'll be. Tickets available right now, 990theanswer.com. We'll see you there. Haven't gotten into this yet, and I wanted to, but Tucker does such great work. He's doing hour-long or more content these days on Twitter, and I try to feature it at the Harump Society there on Substack when I can, but I've said I typically don't like lifting a lot of Tucker's content here. I could just do what some shows do and just play an hour of Tucker talking, but we feel like that's not intellectually honest. However, every now and again, he does do interviews and brings forward some points that we think are definitely worth hearing here. And this interview with Stephen Sund, the former Capitol Police Chief, who was in charge during January 6th, was one of those conversations. There's a lot of good stuff here, and I want to bring our friend in, Julie Kelly, who's over at Substack, speaking of now. Julie doing brilliant work, and if you don't follow her there, juliekelly.substack.com. juliekelly.substack.com is where you can read everything she writes on not just January 6th, but she does great deep dives into these indictments and the players inside the Trump indictments. This has been her wheelhouse. I ask you again, I know you didn't intend to become the indictment specialist, the J6 specialist, but you're a surgeon on these courtroom dealings in ways in which, frankly, a lot of legal commentary on television, they're not as good as you are. Good morning.
Good morning. And Eddie, thank you for the walk-up music. That's one of my favorite workout tunes. So all hail Ozzy. So great question. I mean, I think how I got involved in covering January 6th early on was just seeing how the Biden's DOJ was denying release to people who had been involved in the protests who weren't even accused of any violence, attacking police officers, vandalizing property. They were denying release to people who didn't even go inside the building. So what I did, it was like March of 2021, I opened what's called a Pacer account, and that's where you could purchase all of the court filings. And I just figured out how to navigate that. But also because there were COVID restrictions still at the D.C. courthouse, you could call in and listen to these hearings. Otherwise, now you have to go in person to watch any hearings or any of the trials. So I just sort of became addicted to it and just could not believe what I was hearing and seeing. I mean, obviously, we know there are problems with our criminal justice system, and I'm not naive in that regard. But this was clearly such a political selective prosecution.
This is remarkable. If I could just stop you for a second, because what you just said is remarkable in that, much like our public school system, COVID actually, for as much as we all hated that, and I believe we're all still kind of emotionally wrought and ruined over it, COVID inadvertently shone a tremendous white-hot spotlight on things like public education and our legal system, didn't it? That's what you're saying.
It You know what? It really did. And that's why when the new chief judge came in, they quickly shut down public access to these hearings and trials when some of the major trials were beginning, because they didn't want the American people to be able to call in and hear what Judge Tim Kelly was doing in the Proud Boys case, or Judge Amit Mehta was doing in the Oath Keepers case, or even some of the low level, Tanya Chutkin. I walked into her courtroom one day and saw her, just completely berate a guy who was convicted for 4 misdemeanors. So so yes, it was an eye-opening experience, just like parents sitting there seeing what some of the teachers were saying to their kids.
So I'm not going to, I know you've watched it, I'm sure. I'm not going to have you sit here and listen to all of it, but I did want you to hear some of it for people that may have missed Tucker's interview with Sund, the former Capitol Police Chief. Let's talk specifically, Fastity, give me the one you think best. How about this one, number 53, where they talk about feds in the crowd. This has been long called a conspiracy theory by people like you. People have been critical of people like you, calling it nuts and wacko that there were feds involved. Sund pretty well opens the door, or confirms, once and for all that, oh yeah, sure there were. Take a listen to some of this.
So in the aftermath of January 6th, there's been a huge debate over to what extent, there were federal agents or people who are working in some way for federal agencies in the crowd. And the initial explanation was, well, none. And you're insane if you think that. You're Alex Jones, you're crazy. And then over the last couple of years, we've seen people in authority confirm, actually, yeah, there were a lot in the crowd that day. I mean, that's now a fact. Did you know that going in?
No.
No. So just for perspective, since you've been to a lot of these events, there's a huge a planned demonstration in Washington, D.C. Will there always be assets, agents, people working for federal agencies in the crowd in civilian clothes?
There always could be. And for like inaugurations, there would usually be some combined teams out there. One for communications, but just, for situational awareness. So it wouldn't be surprising, 4th of July, different things like that, where we have threat pictures or concerning threat pictures.
And what does that look like? Does that mean, FBI agents dressed in Dockers and tennis shoes trying to...
Well, it'd just be, plain clothes, plain clothes to blend in. So that wouldn't be unusual, and it'd be, just standard police work. That'd be good police work. So coming into January 6th, and I talk about it in the book, with the fact that shortly after January 6th, I'm driving through Loudoun County. I just talked to somebody from the Hill, and I get a call from overseas, and it's press. I don't remember what it was. It's somebody from Great Britain, and they started asking me about feds in the crowd. And I was like, no, I would have been told. I said, no, we're getting word that there was feds in the crowd. And I said, no, I would have been told. I've got lots of friends with the Bureau. They all have my cell phone number. They would have told me. Thinking about that, and Jill Sanborn's testimony in 2021, where she said they were taking overt action to keep certain people from coming to January 6th to Washington, D.C. That's big for FBI to start taking overt action. I mean, that's not covert, overt. That's a big deal. Fast forward to February of this year, 2023, in the GAO report that says on January 3rd, the FBI was tracking 4 domestic terrorists that were talking about coming to Washington, D.C. The Washington Field Office, their AOR, Area of Responsibility. By January 6th, they were tracking 18 or 19, it's in the GAO report, domestic terrorists. So think about that. They have 18 or 19 domestic terrorists coming to this event. So of course they're going to have resources on them, and they're not, you're not going to be just putting one agent. You're going to have multiple. So it'd be multiple with that. And I don't know how many they actually had.
So this goes on. I mean, it's a long conversation, but that's the nut of it, Julie. Yeah. So give me your thoughts.
So I encourage people to watch it. I like Steve Sund a lot. He is a straight up guy. I've interviewed him myself. I've read most of his book. I have strong disagreements with Chief Sund on his overall analysis of what happened that day, and the defense of how police officers for Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police treated people that day. Police were responsible for killing 3 people that day. So, but Chief Sund is a cop's cop, and that's why they kept him out of the loop. I suspect the 18 or 19 domestic terrorists that the FBI claimed they were tracking were people like Stuart Rhodes, Joseph Biggs with the Proud Boys, Ethan Nordine with the Proud Boys, Thomas Caldwell, the 65-year-old, guy from Virginia. These were not serious domestic terrorists. These were men associated with what Christopher Wray alleges are terrorist groups, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, that had FBI informants planted in those groups months before. So the idea that there's any justification, and I'm not suggesting that Chief Son said that, but, there were hundreds of undercover assets. We know this from MPD. We know that there were undercover and plainclothes Secret Service, Park Police, plainclothes Capitol Police officers, numerous FBI informants. I just released a report last week on my Substack with video of an FBI informant in the Proud Boys who committed multiple offenses that day, who still has not been charged. So Chief Son is correct. Any justification that there were legit domestic terrorists like Joe Biggs, who did nothing that day, really. But, he definitely was kept out of the loop.
Yeah, he didn't know. He said he's never not been told when this sort of thing would happen. This is the first time he's not been told that feds would be involved in an event that he was involved with.
Right. And there's a reason why, because, you can hear he's very serious. He takes his job very seriously. He's very devoted to his officers. So they kept him out of the loop. They denied his multiple requests for National Guard, which is something I also covered in my book. But when I spoke with him, he told me the first time he talked to Stephen D'Antuono, who's the Washington, D.C. FBI field office head, was on January 4th. That's the first time he spoke to him. He did not realize Stephen D'Antuono had just been promoted from the Michigan, Detroit FBI field office after pulling off the Whitmer Fednapping hoax, which involved at least a dozen FBI informants, numerous FBI undercover agents, dozens of specialty handling agents out of a number of field offices. He did not realize that that was the same guy. So, he's very focused on his job. He's gone through hell. He was the fall man, Nancy Pelosi's fall guy, forced to resign, obviously, from a job that he loved and took very seriously. I suspect since completing his book, and now with this interview with Tucker, he's sort of reassessing exactly why he was kept out of the loop and, even how some of these officers, undercover agents, and uniformed officers conducted themselves and brought what could have been a rowdy protest, really, in some areas, to violent confrontation clashes, causing death and injury to American citizens.
Julie Kelly's Substack is juliekelly.substack.com, where she writes all about this and does great investigative work. Well, I could spend a lot of time on January 6th. I guess I won't relitigate it, but I will ask you this. Don't you think that in Trump's defense, there will be a lot of relitigating this, which I find kind of interesting that Smith and this Fannie Willis woman, who we'll get into in just a minute, they're actually going to dredge all of this back up, and they're going to give Team Trump's defense the opportunity to relitigate this. I mean, all of this is going to come rushing back into the spotlight, Julie. I would assume your commentary will come rushing back into the spotlight. And now that we know more, I mean, I do kind of wonder, that assumes we got a media that's going to tell the story. Will more people become more aware? That Gretchen Whitmer case alone, to me, should be, that story should be the reason everyone in this country ought to mistrust the events of January 6th, in my opinion.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. But for the Whitmer Fednapping hoax, and I will say the appellate briefs for both of the men who were convicted on a retrial by this government, they received a hung jury in April of 2022. Two men were outright acquitted amid the successful defense by their attorneys of FBI entrapment. The government decided to retry two men, Adam Fox and Barry Croft. This is very important. Those appellate briefs were filed just yesterday, and they are bombshells. I'm going to be covering that next in my Substack. It's actually titled Declassified with Julie Kelly. I know that's the whatever you call it, the IRL, but it's declassified. If you don't have a grasp on what happened in the Whitmer case, how the FBI stitched these men together, how they spent so much money, lured them into sites that were then used as evidence, how Gretchen Whitmer and her detail were well aware of this plot months before, and they would check with her and her detail before they brought these men, the FBI agents, to her cottage for alleged reconnaissance. She knew about it. Her lawyer knew about it. Her security staff knew about it. My question is, what did Christopher Wray for sure knew about it? What did Bill Barr know about it? But it was to also interfere in the election. Because those arrests were announced, they set these men up, made the announcement on October 8th of 2020. Gretchen Whitmer, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden made this a key point in the waning, days of the 2020 election, blaming Donald Trump for this.
Yes.
But these men were completely set up by the FBI. I'm going to be writing about those appeals because they're so illuminating. So I'm hoping to have that up tonight or tomorrow.
And if you don't believe this, sorry to interrupt. Was it BuzzFeed? Which was the Daily Beast? Who wrote about this? The left-wing outfit that wrote about it. BuzzFeed, now defunct.
BuzzFeed, yes.
Yeah, and that was because it was mind-blowing to me that even a left-wing outlet like BuzzFeed found this so exceptional. They said that this whole plot would never have happened, but not for the feds setting it up. That's the punchline.
That's exactly right. And that's why these 4 defendants, 2 acquitted and 2 got a hung jury in April of 2022. What happened in the August trial is you had this judge and both appellate briefs rightfully, and I covered both of those trials, rightfully condemned and blamed the judge for putting really his whole body on the scale, not just the thumb, but body on the scale. There was evidence of jury bias, a juror who had told his coworkers that he wanted these guys to hang, that he got a jury summons and he hoped it was for this jury. Not only was he seated on the jury, the judge prevented the defense from questioning this juror themselves. He became the foreman of the jury. And that's how these men were quickly convicted on federal kidnapping charges. The depth and the breadth of the corruption of the FBI is only understandable if you take some time to see what happened in that case.
And you can read all of this and so much more as it comes out at Declassified with Julie Kelly. The address at Substack, juliekelly.substack.com. Let me ask you quickly, because I know you've written about the Fulton County situation and Fannie, which the 12-year-old boy in me loves that her name is Fannie. Fannie of Fulton County. Sounds like a bad Johnny Cash song. What do we know about this woman, and how troubled are you about this one versus the 2 Jack Smith indictments or the Bragg and Manhattan indictment, which now seems like the most toothless one of them all, the first one, Bragg. But what do you know? What are you thinking?
So I do cover this also on my Substack, as you just mentioned. I mean, it's a ridiculous indictment. I refer to it as a movie a movie script. It's definitely a screenplay. She has 161 alleged overt acts, which are silly. They're tweets, they're texts between people. I did just a cursory review. Only half of them have to do with anything that happened in Georgia. She's talking about, for example, Mark Meadows texting Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry to ask for the phone number of Pennsylvania's Republican Party chairman. What does that have to do with anything that happened in Georgia?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's ridiculous. I mean, half of them have nothing to do with Georgia. She is basically trying to prosecute a federal multi-state RICO case, which she has no authority to do. But as I point out, she really upstaged special counsel Jack Smith.
That's what it seems. I'm so glad you see it that way. It's like Jack Smith took a back seat to her. I agree with you completely.
He's not going to – I'll tell you what. These egos clashing right now has to be the only amusing sideshow of what's happening to Donald Trump, because you've got this massive ego in Fannie Willis. She's only been a county DA for 2.5 years. She got sworn in January of 2021. She opened her investigation the very next month. Jack Smith, a longtime DOJ apparatchik, a Democratic operative disguised as a federal prosecutor. He swaggers around, gives his little statement, walks off the stage, won't talk to reporters. You think Jack Smith is going to be upstaged by a county DA?
Fannie, yeah, no dice. All right, Julie,
no chance.
Can I have you back soon? And in the meantime, if people don't know the details or the particulars about anything we've discussed and so much more, please read it all at Declassified with Julie Kelly, now on Substack for your reading enjoyment. We got to have you back soon, Julie. My Pillow 2.0. I don't know if you are familiar with the product yet. I don't know if you've seen Mike Lindell talking about My Pillow 2.0, but I'm sleeping on it right now, and I can tell you this is amazing. He's developed a pillow that actually keeps you cool at night. Sincerely, I didn't even know that was possible. If you're somebody that runs a little warm at night, Mike has actually created a My Pillow 2.0, which is that adjustable fill that he's talked about for the last 20 years, but now a new fabric that helps regulate your body temperature through the night, which creates a lower surface temperature, and that gets you a better restful night's sleep. Now, here's the thing. If you go to MyPillow.com and you order the new My Pillow 2.0 today, you'll get another one for free just by using my name, Chris. So go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listeners square, and enter my name, Chris, and you will get a second My Pillow 2.0 for free. My name also gets you up to 66% on everything on that website, 66% off. Robes, slippers, sheets, dog beds, my coffee. Mike has an unbelievable spate of merchandise at MyPillow.com, more than I had any idea. So if you haven't shopped MyPillow yet, I hope you'll go. I hope you'll use my name, Chris, and save big-time money on great products, which are all American made. They are warranted for 10 years. There's a 60-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call 800-932-5056, 800-932-5056, or mypillow.com. Something like 40, we're approaching 40 dead marine mammals washed up on New Jersey beaches since December, with seemingly no curiosity about what causes it, at least as far as the wind farm grift is concerned, and politicians who want to line their pockets and line their relatives and friends' pockets with wind farm money. They don't seem the least bit interested in even being curious that these marine mammal deaths could be caused by their exploration and their development of these wind farms. There are a few people in New Jersey who raise their hand and say, could we just pump the brakes for a second and talk about what's indiscriminately killing these animals? Senator Mike Testa, a friend of the show, is one of them. He's the representative of the 1st District in the New Jersey Senate and joins us again. Senator Testa, thanks for your time today. Hello.
It's great to be on, as always, and good morning to you and your listeners. And, you know, what's amazing when we raise these questions, and even if we just say pause, which actually 70% of New Jerseyans at least want a pause, and a large majority of them don't want our oceans industrialized. And when you look out at the beautiful vista from the beach, if these wind farms are built, what will happen is you're going to see these red lights flashing in the distance. It's going to sort of look like, a dystopian scene, something out of RoboCop or something along those lines. Most people do not want this. They want to escape industrialism when they visit our beaches. And when you ask a question, hey, don't you think we should pause and see what's causing this anomaly of deaths of whales, dolphins, and porpoises? What you get from the wind industry is, hey, we're not exactly sure what is causing the deaths of all of these beautiful sea creatures, but we know 100% it has nothing to do with our exploration of the ocean floor in support of building these windmills. It has nothing to do with our sonar blasts that we're sending out that may affect, the navigation system and the way that whales and dolphins hear and navigate our oceans. I mean, it's absolutely preposterous. And what's even worse than political individuals, what about Greenpeace? What about the Sierra Club? Where are they? I was on Martha McCallum a little while ago, it's probably about 6 weeks ago now, and they showed that beautiful commercial from 1983 about protecting our oceans and protecting our majestic whales, to save the whales. What happened to those people? Where are they now?
There's one group, right, called Clean Ocean Action. I'm told they're standing shoulder to shoulder with you on this, saying, hey, what about the whales? There aren't many, but you're right. There's at least one, and they're apparently being shut out of the discussion.
Oh, absolutely. And again, what we're being called are science deniers, right? This is because we have to build these massive wind farms off of our coast due to climate change. That's also what we're told. And that, they give this absolutely false narrative that the ocean is warmer now, and therefore bait fish are coming in closer to shore, which is causing more mammal-ship interactions. Excuse me? The mammals have some of the best navigation systems out of anyone. And if anything, if you've ever been on the ocean and in a boat, dolphins especially will play in the wake of a boat, and they can easily navigate themselves around a boat. Yet how can they explain,
well,
excuse me, 8 dolphins washing up on the shore in Sea Isle City in one day?
To your point, I've been taking dolphin watching cruises for years off the shore when guests and family visit. We go down the shore and take I mean, it's its own industry. It has been for decades. It's not killing dolphins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's absolutely preposterous. And, just 2 days ago, Governor Murphy signed my bill into law, which is a $100 million boardwalk preservation fund. It's historic legislation to protect our boardwalks, because when there are huge storms, things of that nature, and obviously boardwalks are very expensive to maintain. Most municipalities simply don't have the money to upkeep those massive boardwalks, especially in places like Atlantic City and in Wildwood, which they're huge boardwalks. We needed a fund in the state of New Jersey to help preserve that, because hundreds of thousands of people visit those small municipalities. But what good are the boardwalks going to be if people don't want to go to the beach because whales and dolphins are washing up, and off of our coast we have this dystopian scene of red lights flashing in the distance? It's really preposterous. I mean, this is something we're supposed to preserve. And the hypocrisy of these groups like Greenpeace and the Sierra Club, as well as I do, if one whale or dolphin were to wash up during the exploration phase of offshore drilling for oil, they'd be on the beach demanding that we stop offshore drilling.
Yes.
If it were one whale or one dolphin. Now on the coast, we're up to 60. We're up to 60 on the East Coast. In New Jersey alone, as you said, 40 mammals. This is preposterous.
Senator Testa, and again, I'm one guy, and I guess what do politicians care about me, one guy, but I am the perfect example of someone. I said this to my wife. We rented a condominium with a lovely view of the shore in Atlantic County, in fact, for a vacation this summer. And I said to Christine, my wife, I would have a very difficult time. This was actually in the midst of an ongoing protest in the community to stop wind farms from being developed. And I said to my wife, I would have a very hard time justifying spending money to continue to rent a place with a beautiful view if they are successful in plopping wind farms out there. I'm but one example. I suspect I'm not alone. And I know that they will say, oh, well, selfish guy doesn't want to have a vacation anymore to save the planet or whatever. I'm sure that's what they'll say, but it's just a fact. I mean, what you said is true. We sitting on the beach on the southern tip of New Jersey in Cape May, beautiful scene. I wouldn't want to do it anymore if I got to stare at those things. I just wouldn't. That's the truth.
So you're not alone. In Orsted's own study that they've provided to Cape May County, their own study, it says it will affect tourism 15%.
Wow. Yeah.
Think about that for a second. So you're not alone in this, and that's on its best day, because that's their study, right?
Yeah.
What are the real numbers out there of people once they realize how big and ugly these things are? And never mind the fact that it's going to harm migratory birds, bats, our commercial fishing industry, our recreational fishing industry, which are backbones of the economy in South Jersey, which provide millions upon millions of dollars in revenue for the state of New Jersey. Oh, and by the way, it also provides food on your plate, not only in our state, but throughout the East Coast. It's ridiculous.
Don't you have any fellow Democrats, or I should say not fellow, sorry, you're a Republican, but do you have any fellow assemblymen from Democrat constituencies up and down the coastline that feel the same? I can't imagine they're this detached from reality, that they don't understand tourism is important to their communities that they represent.
I think they only understand elections, and that's why you're seeing the Senate president and Speaker Coughlin now saying, hey, look, this doesn't appear that New Jerseyans really want this, and maybe, we shouldn't be shoving this down the throats of New Jerseyans and all of the hundreds of thousands of people who visit the New Jersey shore each summer. I don't think it's that they really care about the tourism industry, I think they care about elections in November. And the fact that the entire legislature is up in November, myself in the Senate, my assembly mates, Eric Simonson and Antoine McClellan, we're a solid team and we agree 100% on this issue. And we've been, some of the leaders against big wind industrializing our oceans. I mean, just think about that for a second. We are, in fact, if this goes through, we are industrializing the one place that they told us we needed to keep clean and keep industry out of, and yet it's the so-called green energy experts that are saying that we need to industrialize our ocean. I think it's crazy. It absolutely is crazy that we are going to do this, erect these monstrosities off the coast of the state of New Jersey. And by the way, it's all part of Governor Murphy's energy master plan, what we have called the energy disaster plan, to bring more and more green energy. Well, our grid in the state of New Jersey, our infrastructure needs colossal updates. And right now, the state of New Jersey has 50% natural gas, roughly, 40% nuclear energy, and 10% other. And according to Governor Murphy, by 2035, we need to get that 10% up to 100%. It's a utopian pie-in-the-sky initiative that is going to harm New Jerseyans. It's going to be more expensive. They're not going to have reliable energy. Look what happened in Texas with their big freeze then.
Yes.
Why would we be going more and more towards wind energy, which is unreliable and intermittent, when we should be looking at nuclear energy and SMRs, small modular reactors, which are manufactured right here in southern New Jersey in Camden, right in the heart of Camden? They're manufactured. That's what we should be looking at. That's the wave of the future. It's clean energy. And the BPU president, Fiordaliso, even admitted nuclear energy is clean energy.
So you do get the sense, Senator Testa, that most of your constituents stand with you on this thing. I know not everybody's. New Jersey broadly is a Democrat state, as we understand. But does this seem bipartisan? The opposition to the idea of industrializing the ocean, which, by the way, I love. That turn of phrase. That's exactly what it is, and it's powerful that you phrased it that way. Do you think most people in New Jersey are opposed to industrializing the ocean?
I think they are. I think the people are. But unfortunately, their representatives are, again, getting pulled harder and further to the left by people like, the AOCs of the world, the Bernie Sanders of the world, the Phil Murphys of the world, who are pushing this radical, and it is radical, green agenda. I mean, think about this. Right now, Phil Murphy wants to do away with the internal combustion engine, right? Yeah. We're supposed to all have electric cars. Well, how's the gas tax going to work in the state of New Jersey, considering electric cars aren't taxed? What's going to happen to the used car market in the state of New Jersey if you can't go to a gas station, because they will be no more if, in fact, we have 100% electrification in New Jersey, which will be impossible. Oh, and by the way, I mentioned the commercial fishing industry. Last I checked, there's no such thing as an electric ship. The other thing that we have, we're called the Garden State. It's at the bottom of every license plate. It says Garden State. There isn't such thing as an electric tractor. Our wonderful farms in the state of New Jersey, they're not going to be able to be electrified. I mean, so I question this, and the reason I say that it's insane is because they haven't even looked at any of the industries that they are going to affect. We can't just turn the state of New Jersey and the country upside down. People are going to leave in droves if they can't say, hey, you know what? I want to go buy that wonderful Corvette C8, which is an amazing car. It's an amazing feat of engineering. Oh, because it's a gas-powered engine? I mean, it's just ridiculous. What happened in the United States of America?
Whose pockets are they in, Senator? Who's benefiting? Which wind companies are benefiting? Whose family is benefiting? Whose friends are benefiting? There's always money changing hands in these forced arrangements.
Well, it seems like the money that's changing hands are going from the taxpayers and the ratepayers to a foreign-owned corporation. Think about it. We just gave an additional $1 billion subsidy. That's a billion with a B, to Ørsted to make their wind farm project work. And I looked into Ørsted. They're a Danish-owned corporation. Majority shareholder is the Danish king, by the way. And they posted record profits last year. And the $1 billion that was supposed to trickle down into ratepayers' pockets is now going into the pockets of a Danish king. What are we doing?
So, and can we expect to see Governor Murphy, after he's left office, spending more time in Denmark? You know, I mean, is it one of those things? What do you think?
I don't know that he'll spend time in Denmark, but I'll bet you he spends more time in his $9 million villa in Italy. I mean, think about that for a second. You have a New Jersey governor. What is more iconic about New Jersey than the commercial of Governor Kane on the beach in New Jersey in that cable knit sweater saying New Jersey and you perfect together? Every New Jersey governor, whether they even believe it or not, for crying out loud, go to our beaches, go to our boardwalks.
Yeah.
What does he do? He goes to Italy. He goes to Italy for the summer. I mean, it's ridiculous. Well, it shows you just how out of touch with the New Jerseyan he is.
And in fact, while we're on it, I know there's probably not much to say about it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the untimely death of the lieutenant governor. He comes back from Italy for that. I mean, barely. I think he had to be dragged kicking and screaming to even recognize that. But can you speak to that briefly? There seems to be not much said about the lieutenant governor's illness, which was it well known she was ill? I still can't get a clear picture on what we know about that.
No, and my good friend Matt Rooney and our mutual friend Matt Rooney has been writing a lot about this because there's been almost nothing said. It's been very secretive. And again, this is a problem. You know, it seems to me that the Murphy administration likes secrets, right? Yes. And the fact that, you know, during COVID, we really were left in the dark. We weren't sure what the decisions were going to be made, even in the legislature. Now, you know, Lieutenant Governor, may she rest in peace. I only interacted with her twice. She was a very sweet woman to me. May she rest in peace. But we do deserve to know what happened to her. The other secret that has been coming up recently is the one that the front office believes that our schools should be able to keep from parents.
Well, this is where I was going next, and I need you to help me understand what is the delay for people just that are new to this story and don't know. We're talking about 100 parents who gathered outside the courthouse yesterday as the judge is considering whether to block 3 districts from implementing a new policy that require teachers to notify parents if their children request to change gender identities. So Middletown, Marlborough, and Manalapan Englishtown regional school districts all approved a policy that said if kids are having these gender issues, teachers, staff there to tell the parents. Murphy and the Attorney General, Platkin, sue these school districts and say, oh, no, you won't. You're going to keep it secret from parents if that's what happens, which is a remarkable thing unto itself. But what is the foot dragging by the judge, Senator? What do you know about this?
You know, I don't know why the judge couldn't make a policy change right there and make a decision right there. I mean, it just slaps the faces of parents who want the very best for their children. And this is a page right out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals to separate children from their parents. And this presupposes a few things. Number one, that the state is in a much better place to raise your children than parents. And number two, that parents are inherently abusive. It's amazing to me, you know, when I went to public school in Vineland, New Jersey, which was part of then New Jersey's Dirty 30 school districts, which became Abbott districts, schools and PTA groups were begging for parents to get involved in their children's lives, whether it was as chaperones, whether it was as assistant coaches, somehow, some way. Now, I mean, and this trickles down from the top. The Biden administration says if you attend a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist, right?
Yes.
So now if you want to be involved in your children's life and they're having gender identity issues, which, you know, geez, why is that on the uptick? Because of all of the culture that they're creating inside of schools to make one question their gender identity at very difficult times. As one parent said to me, you know, going through puberty and that awkward time of adolescence is hard enough. Now they're being inundated with all of this information to make them question themselves even more than they already are. That was a parent of a constituent of mine, you know, and this is disturbing because we've always taught our children from the beginning that adults should never be allowed to keep a secret between them and your child without the parent knowing.
Yes.
That's grooming, right? That's what we always said. That's grooming. That's unhealthy. But now that's going to be the law. And I had this great conversation with Matt Rooney offline the other day, actually, while he was going to court and I was going to my legislative office. And I said, Matt, think about this. They want the Rooneys and the Testas to clothe their children, to feed their children, to shelter their children. But God forbid we actually know our child.
Yes.
God forbid. And that we have any say at all in how they are actually brought up. You know, what if we think, hey, look, you know, yeah, you can read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, but that's not the handbook, son. That's what you should be afraid of, because that's tyranny. That's how they're going to implement communism in the United States of America. Is that abusive behavior now? Is it? We should all be questioning why in God's name the state thinks they're in such a much better place to raise our children and know our children than we are.
This judge, do we know much about this judge, who this person is? And do you have reason to believe this judge is dragging his feet because he's actually thinking about siding with the state? I can't imagine. I maybe I should. It's hard for me to believe that even now there's a judge who would say a local school board does not get to set the rules for their school district policies, parents and staffs and teachers, and that relationship, but rather a governor and attorney general can swoop in and demand an override. It would astound me, actually. I mean, it's certainly the antithesis of everything we believe about limited government, but of course that's not what Democrats believe. So I don't know. Do you know much about this judge?
I don't know much about this judge, but look, I have faith in the legal system. And I know maybe that's going to come as a shock to some of the listeners, but I'm a lawyer and I've argued cases. And I have to say this, there's cases that I've lost that I don't believe that I should have lost, but I've read opinions, well thought out, reasoned opinions, and said, I can see where the judge came to that conclusion. So my hope and what faith I have in the legal system is that this judge is going to write a legal opinion that's going to have the history of the law, and actually the history of sanity on the side of parents. You know, I had a constituent that came into my office, Chris, that, and this was a year ago, that said they were looking for their child's test scores, their grades, and couldn't find them because Christopher was now Christina, and they couldn't find it.
Wow.
And they were furious. And they had no idea that their child was identifying as something different in school.
Jeez.
And I found out about this, and I was apoplectic in my office. I have to tell you, I didn't even realize, you know, you learn every day on the job. I didn't know this was a thing, you know? I said, what do you mean you couldn't find your child's grades? And they were concerned. And what did they do? Much like what you're going to see many parents do. They pulled their child out of public school.
Yep.
Because they said, there's no way we're going to allow this to happen. Our child needs counseling. Our child is very depressed. They're confused. They're going through a very difficult time. And
rather than seek help and share that with the parents, they just hid it from them and continued to foster that sickness. Yeah.
Correct.
Sick.
Correct. And what's even worse is the State Board of Education, Chris, recently, I'm sure you've seen this in New Jersey, they decided to change some language. They did away with the use of male and female. And instead of saying male and female, it says all genders.
Yeah.
All genders. I don't know about your listeners, but I think I know how you, me, Matt Rooney, how we think.
Yeah.
There's two, right? Male and female. And I predicted this. You can go back and take a look. The first video I ever did when I ran for office in 2019 was A Minute with Mike. And it was in early 2019 when Governor Murphy touted as his win of the week. This is not a joke, folks. His win of the week was having a third non-binary gender option on birth certificates in the state of New Jersey.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh because it's here and it's real. It's not even a joke anymore. I mean, we just talked about the ranking, the highest ranking health official in the country is a man now pretending to be a woman in an admiral, like a Halloween costume. I mean, Mike, that's where we are, I guess, right?
We're celebrating mental illness.
Yeah, we are.
Right? That's what we're celebrating.
Yeah,
we're celebrating mental illness.
And now a judge. It terrifies me that a judge could rule in favor of the government saying it's okay to keep mental illness from parents at school. That it terrifies me, but I get the sense that may be where we're headed. I don't mean to be a pessimist here. And if, in fact, that's the ruling, I hope it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. I really do.
And I think it will. And again, like I said, I have faith in the legal system, and I know that may come as a shock, and maybe it's because I'm a proud attorney who took the oath when I became an attorney that we are going to stick to sanity and the rule of law. Because, again, parents have rights. And, you know what's – I've only heard from one individual who disagreed with this. One that actually took the time to give me a call. And I take all calls, Chris. I do, because I want to hear what the enemy of America is thinking, because these folks are un-American. Let's put it out there, you know. And that may come as a shock. I'm not using that as hyperbole. These people actually believe that parents should not know their child, that they should raise them and, you know, essentially allow them to do what they want. And it was frightening to me, the lack of logic and the lack of sanity that was coming from this person talking to me. And this person indicated to me that I believe children are parents' property. And I said, no, they're not your property. I said, however, it's a parent's duty to help guide their child to become a responsible adult, someone who does their homework, someone who cleans their room, someone who actually, you know, eats healthy. I said, what are you supposed to do? Just like have a child and let them be?
Yeah. They're not property, but their responsibility. And the school districts, I guess, are arguing, or Phil Murphy's arguing, that children are the state's property. I mean, you could turn that argument right around, right? Isn't that the argument they're making? They belong to us, the state.
And that's what I said. Essentially, I said, so what you're saying is the state's in a better position to raise the child than the parent. I said, that's a very frightening proposition. And of course, the phone call ended shortly after because all I got was liberal screaming, right? That's what happens after that I'm a fascist and things of that nature. I mean,
you're the fascist. I mean, up in the north, as you know, in Massachusetts, they've outlawed. They're basically making it illegal for parents to take their kids to treatment for this sort of thing. They're threatening California. The state is actually saying you're abusive if you don't entertain this in your children and try to get them therapy and help. They'll take them from you. They're threatening now.
And these doctors, I always say this, one of my favorite professors at Villanova taught me the best place to start is the beginning. These doctors that entertain this crazy
monsters. Yes. The children's medical professionals that are entertaining this are maybe the most villainous monsters of all in this story. I agree with you completely. Senator, I got to split. Mike Testa, how can people reach you if they want to, either in your district, 1st District of New Jersey, or elsewhere?
So the easiest way is at my legislative office. That's Sen, S-E-N, Testa at njleg.org.
God bless you, Mike.
That's the easiest way. Thank you so very much.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.